Welcome back to Prep Recruiting Insider, PRI, here at NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale. I'm the coach of PRI, Rick Gailey, along with our Prep Recruiting Insider, Renee Nato. And today we are excited about having the senior writer for TigerBait.com. What a great title, Brian Lazare. Brian, you and I go back a long way.
Long time, going back to, Chalmette and Rummel.
Yes, indeed. When Chalmette was in the Catholic League.
That's right, back in the late 70s.
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure having you here today to talk about LSU sports. I know you're kind of right in the midst of every sport right now, but we're going to think back a little bit to what's going on, what went on with the football team.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Brian, we talked to you about a lot of things, as Rick said, and we go back a long way. Your overall take, I don't think anybody knows more about LSU and football and stuff than you. Follow it very, very closely. What was your overall take of the class that Les just signed for 2015?
Well, there were two types of goals. You had immediate goals the team had to take care of, and then some long-term goals. When you look at the 2015 team that's coming up, there certainly needed to be help at running back. Having lost McGee and Hilliard, they were down to two scholarship tailbacks, Leonard Fournette and Darrell Williams. So you need at least three, and you'd like to have a safety valve with a fourth. Well, they go out and sign three. Obviously, the two key ones were Darius Geis and Nick Brissett, Geis from Catholic High in Baton Rouge and Brissett from U High. So I think that they will be fine at the running back situation now. Well, you have Leonard Fournette, you have Darrell Williams, and then you have Geis and Fournette, and they battle it out to see who the number 3 tailback is. And of course, they also signed Leonard's little brother, Leonard. I'm sure he's not going to get a whole lot of playing time right off the bat. The other situation in the running backs is fullback, because Connor Neighbors used up his eligibility. Melvin Jones, who was the number 2 fullback last year, he has run into some academic issues and is no longer on the team. So when LSU began class this January, there were no returning scholarship fullbacks. And look, we all know Les isn't getting rid of a fullback. You know, they're going to line up in the I formation sometimes, so they need a fullback. So therefore, I think the signing of David Dupree from Lakeshore, I know he wasn't a fullback at Lakeshore, but he's certainly that's the plan for him to play fullback, and the fact that he is enrolled in January, I think, is really going to help a lot. And you know, they'll get to see whether or not he's prepared to be the fullback this year. You know, they have the walk-on from Ruston, John Moore, who played a little bit last year, so they have him back. But so when you look at immediate holes to fill at the running back spot, I think they did that. Defensive end, they lose Jamario Rasco and Daniil Hunter. They really like to have a pass rushing defensive end, and a pass rushing defensive end is a guy who can come in and play right off as a true freshman in certain situations. And I think that signing the Arden Key from Carolina is certainly going to help there. And then finally, in the secondary, cornerback, Jalen Collins leaves early for the NFL. Rashard Robinson is no longer in the program, so they really needed another cornerback. And they go out and they sign Kevin Tolliver, they sign Jackson from Riverdale, they sign Xavier Lewis from East St. John. So they again helped themselves, and what is even more important is that Tolliver enrolled in school early, so he'll be able to go through spring practice. So the immediate holes to fill for the 2015 team, where freshmen can come in and help, they took care of. Long-term goals, offensive line, big check mark. Signed 5 offensive linemen. You know, Maya Tehuma from Keller, Texas is the best of the bunch. They have Weathersby from Houston is another key player. So those are the 2 best in the class, but they have 5. So I think when they're looking to build the offensive line, because they could lose, you know, at least 2 and maybe 3 offensive linemen after next year, so that helps. The one spot they didn't fill, linebackers, because they are down to just 7 scholarship linebackers right now, And after next year, Deion Jones is finished. He'll be a senior. Lamar Lewis will be a senior. Kendall Beckwith could leave early for the NFL. So they are a little bit thin at linebacker, and now you didn't bring in any this year. So, Frank Wilson's already said linebacker, major priority in the 2016 class.
So LSU looks like they've done a very good job of getting balance on their team, especially short term, with the signing class. And it's gotten more difficult because back not too long ago, it was LSU against SEC schools, LSU recruiting against some more local schools. And now everybody in the country shows up in Louisiana to recruit Louisiana athletes. And it's gotten harder for LSU. Even though they still get their share, it makes it more difficult to recruit Louisiana.
Yeah, the more teams are coming in now. There's no doubt about that. And but LSU, like you said, is still going to get its pick. And if LSU wants somebody, I'm not going to say certainly not 100%. I'm not even going to say 9 out of 10, but 80% of the time they're going to get that guy from in-state. But you also see LSU going more out of state, and I really think that's the change in the way that college football is covered now. Every game's on TV just about, and kids know more about schools all around the country. Somebody who lives in California is going to know something about LSU or about any school in the SEC, and that's opening up the avenues for recruiters, and they can now recruit more nationally than in the past. But still, look, I'm a big believer. Push comes to shove. You got to get the best players in state. You got to keep to be a championship contending team.
That's Byran Lazare, senior writer for TigerBait.com. We're going to come right back and solve some more of LSU problems going forward here at NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale. PRI will be back. Welcome back to PRI, Prep Recruiting Insider, here at NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale. Rick Gailey, your coach of PRI, along with Renee Nato, the insider in Prep Recruiting Insider. And we're continuing our discussion with Byran Lazare, senior writer for TigerBait.com. And there's been some staff changes, I know, and Renee wants to refer to a couple of them.
Yeah, Kevin Steele and Ed Orgeron. Defensive change with Kevin Steele coming in, and what impact will Ed Orgeron have on this defense?
Well, I really don't think from a philosophical standpoint with Kevin Steele coming in for John Chambers, there's going to be much of a change. They're very good friends. Grew up in the same hometown in South Carolina. When Kevin was out of coaching after he lost his job at Clemson, he spent a lot of time around LSU, and there was a chance that he was going to be a consultant or possibly even an intern that year, but that didn't work out, and he ended up going with Nick Saban at Alabama in the personnel department over there. So look, they both have similar philosophies. There was some talk, will they go to some 3-4, and the more I'm hearing now, it'll be interesting to see what they do in spring, but the more I'm hearing now, they're going to stay mostly 4-3. I think that the addition of Ed Orgeron is going to have more of an impact because no doubt, forget about how good a recruiter he is. I think he's one of the best defensive line coaches in the country. And look, LSU's defensive line really, the last couple of years have, I'm not going to say underachieved, but they've been just adequate. And they've got a lot of big young kids in there who've been in the program for a couple of years, like Gilmore and Haran and McQueedius Bain. And it'll be interesting to see what Orgeron is able to get out of those guys during spring practice. And so LSU's got a lot of young guys, and Orgeron, it'll be interesting to see what he does with this young talent on the defensive front.
Yeah, with Kevin Steele, I think one of the important things is that I think the terminology is not going to change very much, because Les has been known that when he changes coordinators, the system, it's like the NFL very much, the system changes, so the kids have to learn all new words, but I think that that's something that's going to be positive. But also on the coaching side at wide receiver, Tony Ball's coming over from Georgia, and something that I find extremely interesting, Brian, and I think it's unique to the SEC. Schools kind of cannibalize each other for assistants, that there's a bunch of not so much lateral moves, but moving from school to school within the SEC. Most other conferences start shuffling people from all over the place.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think, Tony Ball is he's replacing Adam Henry, who's going to the NFL. Henry, pretty good recruiter, pretty good a coach. I think Tony Ball is a better X and O guy working with the receivers. He may not be quite as good a recruiter as Adam Henry was, but you know, I think Ball has a lot of experience. He's been in the league at Georgia. He's produced some good wide receivers, and I think they're looking with these young receivers that they have. You know, they're looking at a guy who can develop them and get them to be better on the field players.
The elephant in the room, the last couple of minutes, Brian, quarterback situation. Everybody wants to know, how important is it that someone steps forward this spring?
Well, look, I don't know how important it is for somebody to step forward this spring, but I know when the season opens on September the 5th against McNeese State, they got to be better at that position. Now, I think the LSU fans are going to be so frustrated between now and September because they're going to want all kinds of information and what's going on at the quarterback race, and guess what? When Les meets with the media, he ain't going to give us a hint. He's going to say both are developing well. We won't get any statistics from the scrimmages. We will see them in the spring game, but, you know, okay. We're not going to know anything until they line up next September, and then we'll see at that time. You know, you hope that both quarterbacks have improved. Certainly, everybody knows Brandon Harris's upside is greater than Anthony Jennings. A little bit better athlete, definitely a better arm. Wasn't ready for the SEC this past year, and you can only hope that he develops. And between now, we're the 1st of March to the 1st of September, in these next 6 months, both those guys, but Harris in particular, needs to develop, and for LSU to be a championship contender.
Yeah, it's the difference between being a national championship contender or just being a good team is going to be the quarterback play. And it's going to come down a lot to coaching. Real quick, 15 seconds worth of this. Jim Hawthorne is going to retire after next year. Legendary voice of LSU. That's going to be interesting to see how that gets handled.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You know, a lot of people think that they're going to split it up. One guy will do play-by-play for football and basketball, one for baseball. But Jim will really be missed.
And that's Brian Lazare. Go to tigerbait.com, read his writing. Great sports writer, covers things better than almost anybody. Worth your time and effort. Just like coming out here to NOLA Motorsports Park is worth your time and effort. What a great facility here in the event center today with GP and NOLA coming up. We'll be back after this break.